We conclude today the seventh letter. Till now we've been speaking about how wonderful it is to have a portion of God. A portion, even though God is indivisible, yet we can have our soul illuminated with a portion of God, a divine light that can illuminate our souls, particularly in the time of prayer, and illuminate that we can have a revealed connection to the Almighty. Now we go on to having a lot. A lot signifies something different, like a lottery. Not all things are equal. A portion can give out equal portions. When it comes to a lottery, well, there's one winner. I mean, it could be several winners. So when we speak about our relationship with God, well, we only have one Torah and one law. And in that respect, we're all equally obliged. You know, whether it's honoring your parents, whether it is keeping the Shabbos, whether it's studying Torah, giving charity, whatever the case might be, it's one law. For all of us, we're all equal. And in that respect, we all have the same portion. There's no distinction. We'll be illuminated in the same way. However, although we are in that sense all equal, so to speak, under the law or by the law, but there is something that makes us distinctive one from another. Even if you're Jewish and have a Jewish soul, well, where your soul comes from in the divine order, or how it sort of speaks, comes down into your body, will make a difference in what needs to be illuminating your soul in particular. There's the general, right? One law for us all, in a sense. And then there is the general, and then there's the particular. Now, that will be even one generation versus another generation. Like the times of the Talmud, the main gateway was the study. Today, the main gateway, even though study is very important, of Torah, might be charity. In any case, the point being is that in every generation, there is the particular of that generation. If the particular of a generation is study of Torah, doesn't negate everything else that you have to do, but there's something unique about that generation that needs it specifically. In other words, to rectify something that needs to be fixed from a previous time or for whatever reason. That's on a global sense. Then there is a particular sense. That my soul, and all of our souls, for most, Rebbe actually was a unique soul, that he wasn't a reincarnated soul. He was a new soul that came into this world. Baal Shem Tov actually divulged that on the day of his birth, that he was a new soul. But you and I, and most all, if not all, are reincarnated souls. Now, we're not going to get into the depth of reincarnation now. We will be doing that in an upcoming letter. But the basic idea of reincarnation is that in a previous generation or previous time, the soul that I'm carrying on, or the mission of that soul that I'm carrying on, was not fulfilled previously. So this is the specific reason why the soul came into this world. And Baal Shem Tov says 70, 80 years the soul can come into this world, maybe just to do another favor, or to do a favor for another. In other words, it was lacking that in a previous lifetime. And that's the concept of reincarnation. Again, in brief, without going into all of the details. And this is what it means in the Talmud. Our sages say, person asks, with what commandment was your father most careful, Zohir, or most illuminous in? The answer was, well, the person answered, the commandment, the mitzvah of tzitzis. The point being over here is that we all have to fulfill all of the mitzvahs, but there's something that is the luminous mitzvah in my life that I need to fulfill the purpose that I was created for, specifically. And that will differ one person to another. Just as each commandment, right, represents a specific organ of the body, and each organ of the body is unique. So likewise, each mitzvah has a uniqueness to it, even though there's a commonality in the fact that it's the will of God, every mitzvah. And that's when we make a blessing on the mitzvah, we say, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvosav, that you have sanctified us in your mitzvah. They're all the same, but then we end off with the particular of that mitzvah. So there's something unique about every mitzvah that it fulfills, as just like every organ of the body has its unique function that it needs to fulfill. Now, when we speak about a greater illumination of the soul through this mitzvah, what it means is just a heightened focus on a particular mitzvah in our lives. It doesn't mean that we're weak in other areas. No, every area we have to fulfill to the maximum. But this is what it means, most careful, not, your favorite. We're not talking about your favorite. It's not a favorite over here. It's what's most luminous and what is most necessary for you to fulfill your purpose, which I'm going to have a take on that. We'll get there. The Alter Rebbe says that this idea of the individual light that needs to be bestowed in my soul to illuminate my particular soul, what that particular mitzvah is a lottery beyond comprehension. Who wins the lottery? Well, no rhyme or reason. It's beyond. So here there's also no rhyme or reason in our understanding of things. Of course, on the divine level, that's a different story. But this arose in God's desire for whatever purpose, whatever reason, that, can be from a previous generation, a previous time incarnation that did not fulfill what was necessary then. So it carries on, and therefore this is your lot. And this is what it means. How pleasant is our lot? In other words, there's a particular thing in my life that needs to be illuminated specifically for me, that sort of becomes the gateway for everything else that I do, in a sense, becomes that gateway. And this transcends logic. And so it's not like, I'm choosing this because this makes sense to me. No, it's choosing us more than we choose it, so to speak. That's the conclusion of letter 7. What's my take? Or let's unpack it a bit more. First of all, the idea of reincarnation. And as a result of that, we have something specific that needs to be fulfilled. How do you know? What it is? Well, the easy one that you can know, by the way, it doesn't have to necessarily be just one mitzvah. It could be two things, right? Even though here the example of one, but I'm going to give it on two dimensions over here. One is that thing that always seems to be coming up. That mitzvah. That mitzvah that you just have a natural knack for it, much more so. A natural knack. Something that really resonates with you. Now, the fact that it resonates with you and you just do it on autopilot, so then obviously you're not being careful, you're not being luminous about it. You know, that one that kind of just grabs you. So for some it might be being charitable. They just love being charitable. They love giving money, time of themselves, you know, help others. Another person could be study of Torah. That illuminates their soul. That's specifically what talks to them. Another might be, you know, guests, Shabbos guests. And that's what illuminates their soul. We need to think about that for ourselves. What is that thing in my life that's going to illuminate, that is illuminating the pathway, the gateway? There are all the other things that I do will also kind of pass through and come together with that. Again, it's not diminishing the other mitzvahs that we need to fulfill because we have an obligation. But it does mean that this one talks more. Another way to know it's the actual opposite. The one I'm most resistant of. We see that in human relationships. In that area that I'm most resistant, that's probably where I really need to engage in. I really need to give myself over. I'm resistant to being emotionally supportive. I'm resistant at dealing with the issues. I don't want to face them. Why? Because that's probably where I have a hole in my soul, and that's where I need to fix. That probably the thing that we run away from, that constantly seems to come back, that's probably one of the things that we have a particular purpose that we need to specifically engage in order to illuminate our souls. And again, we see that in human relationships very, very easily, very simply. But in mitzvahs, likewise. So that is really important that we need to recognize. Now, why? Why do I have in my soul this thing, you know, like some people are not trusting of people, not trusting of God and the goodness of God, because they've had experiences that lead them, or a natural inclination not to be. So that, for whatever reason, it's a lottery. God gave that to someone, or gave that, whatever it is, to me, because instead of running from it, I need to recognize that that's something I need to work on. That's my lot. I have to work on that. Sometimes we think that we're stuck in a relationship, stuck to the person you're married to. If you would recognize that what you need to work on in that relationship is really what your soul needs for its own healing, you won't feel stuck. You'll see that by working on what you need to work on, it will illuminate your soul. It will illuminate the relationship. It will illuminate your life. I see that over and over, you know, in being involved in people's lives, how true and how real this is. Why? Well, just because, for whatever reason, maybe it's a reincarnation from a previous lifetime that needs to be worked on, fixed, and whatever the case may be, but this is the fact. At the same time, the fact that I need to put extra effort in this particular area doesn't take away from all the other things. It's not that I do less in the other things. It just means that this is specific to me. Shabbos is for every Jew to keep. Charity is for every person. Tefillin is for every man, Jewish man over 13. Equal. No distinction. So you got to do it, and you got to do it, with a gusto. Not like, oh, I have the things that really talk to me, right? So I'll give you a little hint. I know for me, one thing that's a luminous of my soul and is a purpose of mine and a gateway is learning Tanya, teaching Tanya. There's no question. Some of you might even guess that on your own. Question is for yourself. Try to figure it out and develop it and work on it. Okay. Questions, comments. I have some questions on Facebook, then we'll get to, if we have anything on Instagram. Okay, Davida, help me over here. Erica and yourself. Okay. And okay, a bunch of questions. Okay, let me get to the questions before I lose the feed. Erica, if it is a negative commandment that our specific mission, if we resist doing that commandment only once, does that mean we have succeeded? Well, I mean, if the commandment came up again, right? If let me give an example of lashon hara, speaking ill of another, and if that came up again, and you succeeded only once, but the next time and the third time you didn't succeed, so it means not just one-time success; it means constant success in whatever it is. So, just by way of example. But is that success one time? Yes, but is that it? It was only meant to succeed one time? I don't think so. Davida, is suffering connected with reincarnation? If a person is suffering in this life, is to do something that they have done something negative in a previous life. Dealt with that yesterday in the Parsha class. But I mean, we could have suffering given to us because of a previous incarnation, and therefore we need to suffer something now in order to atone for something of a previous incarnation. That is possible, yes. Don't forget, I know now that. Okay, great. All right, before we go into more I know nows, does anybody have something to share with us in yes, we Jews believe in reincarnation. That's a fundamental, Kabbalistic idea. Absolutely. That's a Jewish idea, just to make certain that everybody has clarity. Jane, is it right to think that for every suffering I experience, it is meant either to teach me or others, not just as part of a consequence I made? Absolutely. God doesn't bring upon us any suffering merely to punish us. It is an atonement. Suffering brings atonement. We learned that in the third book of Tanya. And it's ultimately meant to bring me to tshuva, to a higher place, to a better place, to a greater ascent from the descent. Yes. Very good. Thank you, Jane. Tim, could I clarify which is the hole in the soul, the mitzvah we have a knack for, or the one we are resistant to? Well, the one we have a knack for, you wouldn't have a hole in the soul as much. The hole in the soul is the one that we're resisting. That's why we resist it. It's too painful. And we don't recognize, no pain, no gain, that if we deal with it, with that hole in the soul, we can grow. We will grow from it. And exactly why God brings us any kind of pain is in order that we should grow from it and do tshuva and come closer to Hashem and be better. So very important that we appreciate that idea. Very good question. How do we know the reincarnation before or not? Just assume you are. Don't go looking into your lucky stars, do any divination to figure out, I was in a previous lifetime. Well, you got to honor me. I was the king and the queen of... Yeah, anyways. Alice is a person who brings on suffer really bad if it's not for a higher good. Does a person who brings on suffer really bad? I'm not certain what you mean by that, Alice. Could you be more clear? Sorry. In the meantime, Michael, I know now that a mitzvah that requires work from me are the mitzvahs that require from me to repair. Okay, very good. Anna, I know now that it is him who chooses me to fulfill the mitzvahs, the particular thing to illuminate my soul. Yes. I now ask myself, Deborah says, what do I need to learn from this in a difficult moment? Okay. David, I know now that I need to work on both the areas I tend to move towards, which I have a natural tendency for, and as well as the opposite, I tend to push away constantly, the area where I lack and have my biggest challenge doing. Very good, excellent. Yes. Very true. Marcy, please join us. Go ahead, Marcy.
So how do we know what's recurring for us versus what's recurring for everybody? And I feel like every day brings an opportunity for Torah study, an opportunity for giving charity, an opportunity for volunteering, an opportunity for hosting. I mean, maybe not for hosting guests, but how do I know what's intended as a message for me and what's just a kind of a message for the universe? I mean, especially with Clubhouse, where there's Torah study almost constantly on the app, and so if I wanted to, I could make every day like Shavuos on Clubhouse, just go class to class to class, and everybody who's on Clubhouse has that same opportunity.
Right. So So I think you have to, if let's say in Torah study there are certain things that speak to you more, touch your soul more, you feel a greater illumination. So in that area would be, something more, um, your gateway. That's in Torah study. But, not necessarily in the Talmud, when the question was asked, with what is your father most careful, most luminous about? The response was not Torah, a study of a particular area, but was tzitzis. So it may not be Torah study. I mean, I would suggest that you use this method also to understand and appreciate what area in Torah study that talks to you more and that touches you. And when I mean touches you, I don't mean that just gives you an emotional an appeal, but actually is more life changing. That is actually enhancing your life, and you're getting closer to Hashem, doing another mitzvah as a result of it. So that's what's luminous. Luminous is not that makes me feel good, because makes me feel good doesn't make me good. So what is making you better Jew? So and that talks to you in such a way that you feel that every time I learn this, every time I do this, I just feel that I'm, stronger faith I have in God. I'm more, feeling a desire to even connect more to Hashem. So what is it that does that for you? That is, the question, right? Then the other thing is, what is that thing that I'm running away most from that constantly comes up? That's where the gaping hole in our soul is. That might also be something that I have to recognize is something I got to deal with rather than run away from it. I have to embrace it. So, you need your mentor to discuss this together, probably with, to help guide you in it. So you can, through, honest discussion, hopefully you can come to recognize and then work on that particular thing to develop it even further. That's the idea, is once you have that awareness that you can work on it and develop it further and illuminate your soul even more. So you're enhancing, and it's not just about enhancing that particular area in your life, but through that it becomes like the gateway for enhancement of the other good things that you do, the other mitzvahs that you do. That's also an important element. Does that resonate, Marcy?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for bringing that up, and always bringing up good points. 1 second, David. Just give me a moment here before I lose the feed on Facebook. Does a person who causes a suffering, perpetrator, really add to the victim if it's not for a higher good? Oh, you're asking so, also asking a good question. If someone's perpetrating and doing something negative to a person, so, if it's coming as, I mean, it was really from last night's class and not what we're discussing right now, but just briefly, I'll say that just because something wasn't intended for a person that it should come their way doesn't mean that the perpetrators should choose to do it. That's still freedom of choice. God has many different agents, and whatever is meant to be, that I'm supposed to come to me, will come to me, but the person who chose to do it is still responsible because they didn't have to choose to do it. God wants it. Okay, so it's many agents that that will take up God's agency, and you don't need to do that. Susan, what happens if suffering is too much and one thinks about suicide? Ooh, then you really need help. Then you really need help. You need a mentor, you need friends, yeah, I mean, need to reach out. Cherry, when in Scripture does it teach about reincarnation? It doesn't. It's alluded to, but it's not taught there. Okay. David, please share with us.
Yes. I'm understanding that only reason why we're being reincarnated is because we have this hole in our soul. Otherwise, we wouldn't have a purpose here. Is that correct?
Well, no. We have a hole in our soul. It can start off as a small little hole which means that our soul came into this world because it needed to fulfill something that was not fulfilled in a previous lifetime. And that's what reincarnation. Reincarnation is not that the exact same soul is coming back. It's like on the same branch, a new leaf that now is carrying on this purpose that was not fulfilled previously. So it's about the purpose that needs to be fulfilled, and therefore this sort of extension of the soul that came previously, like a leaf that extends itself, that buds itself now from the same branch that the previous soul came from, in order to fulfill this purpose that this branch needs to fulfill. So it comes back, and there's a small little hole. The hole probably gets bigger because once you have a nature, usually it's nurtured. And if it's not nurtured in a healthy way, then it'll be in a negative way, and then it becomes a bigger hole in the soul. So, for example, a soul previously might have been a great scholar, but was a little haughty, full of themselves in their Torah scholarship. So that lack of humility needed to be fixed. So the soul came back. It came back with that purpose to be fulfilled. Well, if it has that purpose, or it has a little, stain on the soul, taint on it, so to speak, and it could become bigger if it's not, dealt with. So often that lack of humility. So you're not coming back as a humble soul, because that means you didn't fix anything. You're coming back as a non-humble soul. In order that you should make yourself humble, because you don't fulfill a purpose if you have been given everything, from above. You've got to attain it through your efforts. So you come back. You got to work on that. So that would be sort of the idea that we're speaking of over here. I hope that's clear.
So so the previous soul had a lot of the stuff that we had before. Let's say I come into this world, I have the same thing like you're saying, and I could be accumulating other things as well. I'm thinking.
Well, of course we can. Yeah, that's for sure. We can accumulate other things. That's for sure.
But our job is really to repair what our lack is. The previous soul has this lack, like you said. So now we have to correct it, and so we can come back and not have to return. I'm thinking.
Right. Yeah. I mean, don't worry about, just worry about what you got to work on.
Rabbi, if I can say something.
Sure.
So the prayers do allude to a previous life and incarnation. I mean, it's very specific language. When I read the Siddur, there's a lot in the prayers that talks not just about reincarnation. It talks about a lot of things, including Mashiach. And, I mean,
absolutely.
So much of it is in the prayers.
Right.
It's specific.
Yes.
And I've learned a little bit about reincarnation, and there's another concept that's even stranger, but I won't get into that. That people are here to do mitzvahs and focus on this life. we're not here to figure out past lifetimes and blah, blah, blah. That's irrelevant. We're here now in the present to do whatever in the present is challenging us. And those mitzvahs, like as many as we can fulfill in this lifetime.
Yes, thank you for mentioning that, Vilma. Absolutely correct. So, again, don't go into divination to try to figure out what your soul was in a previous time. What's important is that when you recognize the challenge that you have, so that can be from a previous incarnation, but it's irrelevant. The point is the fact that you have this challenge and it's constantly coming up, right? It's constantly coming up is a sign that that's something I have to engage in, that it's part of, the reason why I'm here. Now, there's some things you'll notice that you only got to deal with once a month, once every 3 months. It's not such an issue in your life. So, okay, we got to deal with everything. But then you're going to see certain things that are reoccurring. They're reoccurring. Why are they reoccurring? It's because that's an area I've got to deal with. So that's on the negative side, and I'm giving both on the negative and the positive side. On the positive side, it means the thing that really talks to me, illuminates, and is really something that gives me strength, that I can do other things with greater strength. I pray better, I learn better because I'm very, let's say, charity is my thing. I'm just giving you a way of example, right? So I pray better, I learn better because when I'm, by the act of giving, it just lifts up my soul, that everything else seems to fall into place. Oh, that's great. So that's on the positive side. Then I'm just saying that on the negative side, there's also things that we need to deal with, exactly. And it's what's important is the dealing with it, as opposed to worrying about or concerned with, oh, well, where do I come from? Why is this coming to me? It's your lot. It's a lottery. This is what God has given you. Just accept it and deal with it. Yes, thank you for that, Vilma. How can a soul have a hole in it? It's non-physical. You're right. It's a metaphor. It's not physical at all. Totally correct. Totally correct. Sarah, what if the hole in your soul seems to be there is no marital relationships in your life, and you are aging, and you're supposed to marry and multiply? Okay, I can't take up the personal stuff over here. Can't take up the personal stuff right now. That would be, too difficult or too much for the moment. But that's a good question. We do that in our. By the way, this Wednesday we're starting a new group. Still a couple places left if you want to join the Tanya Mentor Program. Wednesday, 7:30. So do sign up at TanyaRabbi.com. At the Tanya Journal, you'll see it there. Liba, how does this relate to the soul of an evil person? Do they come back to do good? We're only coming back to do good. No one's coming back to do no eternal damnation. Don't we're coming back to do good. Only that. Absolutely correct. Do we inherit stains in our soul from our parents? In a sense, yes. It seems more reasonable to think that we inherit the sins of our fathers, meaning that we're born with what our ancestors did or did not accomplish. We're given the opportunity and responsibility to pay not to pay their price, but to fix. It's not about paying the price, it's about fixing. What do you think the mitzvah of our generation? Well, on one hand, it's shlichus. Shlichus means to be an emissary of God Almighty, to be an emissary of the Rebbe, to bring the final redemption. Our unique generation is about bringing the final redemption, to bring Mashiach. No doubt about it. That's what it is. I think I've answered everybody. Let me know, Davina. I think I did. Anybody else with a question, with a comment? And Jeffrey. Oh.
Just a quick comment, Rabbi. That, and
sure.
we talked about this in other classes that I've been in. That that I think there might be occasions, especially in very close relationships, or intimate or marriage relationships, for example, or possibly even with an employer or something like that, when one might become to feel that you're the problem, that there's you're doing everything wrong, you can never do anything right, or you're the cause of problems. In other words, that there's times of, I don't want to necessarily use the word that everything is abusive, but there are other people who are not. There are other people who are so off center that they project or so I'm just saying this in a kind of what I think is maybe a cautionary. Yes, we have to work on the things that when you recognize that aren't, that you need to perfect, or things that things that might be holes in your soul, but you also have to recognize that the way to work on it might be to separate yourself from somebody who's being that way, or even in a work relationship. That's all. I just wanted to bring out that whole point also.
Yes, you're right. Sometimes it might be that, but if something is constantly,
if you're being physically harmed, for example, I just wanted to bring up that extreme.
Right. Yeah, if you're being physically harmed or even emotionally harmed, but also, so absolutely. But if this is constantly coming up in our lives, harm, we got to ask ourselves, what's going on? We can't. Now, this is not about rectifying or not rectifying or diminishing anything of the abuser's abuse. It's not at all the point. But the fact that this comes my way constantly, consistently, right? Whatever it is, we have to ask ourselves, what is it that I need to fix on my end? That there's something here that, again, and I'm being very careful over here, I'm not justifying the abuser. The abuser is wrong, 100%. But if this is constantly coming your way, when we mature enough and we grow up enough, then we have to take note of that and then ask ourselves, what can I do? Not about the abuser, about myself, that this is constantly coming up. The Tzemach Tzedek, a chassid came up to him and said, Rebbe, I get constantly abused in synagogue. Whenever I say something, he didn't use the word abuse. I said that just because you said that. He said, I constantly get stepped on, he said, which you could call abuse. Whenever I come up with some idea, an opinion, or a thought, I'm not taken seriously. So, so today, if you were living today, so of course you're going to side with the victim. I mean, what else could you do but side with the victim, right? Wow, look at that! People are abusing you. They're stepping upon you, and as you so say, what does the Tzemach Tzedek say? Well, if you wouldn't spread yourself so thin in the synagogue, then you wouldn't get stepped upon, right? So he helped them, at least, because he was at least would be honest enough with himself after the Tzemach Tzedek would tell him this, that what. Don't make that your opinion needs to be heard, and you need to be heard. Maybe that's your problem, that you need to be heard, and therefore you need to share your opinion. Don't spread yourself so thin so you won't get stepped on. So others maybe should have been more sensitive, and but someone said it wasn't speaking to others. He was speaking to him. What is his message? Don't be so needy of your opinion to be heard that you spread yourself so thin. The other people should have been, should be more sensitive. You can say, well, they should be more sensitive. Well, maybe if someone said it was speaking to them, perhaps he would say that to them. Perhaps, maybe not. I don't know. But that's irrelevant to what that person needed to hear, even though they were feeling abused emotionally. People weren't sensitive. Again, I'm maybe overusing the word abused over here, but he did say I'm being stepped upon. Those were his words, right? So the point I want to make is that if this is constantly happening, so there must be something here that I got to take note of, and not just, point the finger to the abuser. Now, the abuser is, again, I'm not rectifying, I'm not justifying it all the abuser. And be very careful. Don't go away thinking that I'm doing that. But then that would be missing something, though, in our lives, that when we have this constant thing that is coming up, because we got to look inside of us, and maybe we're doing something that is really, not where we should be at. We need something to be rectified. I hope that's clear, Jeff.
Yeah. I mean, like the idea of patterns of behavior, and so on.
Right.
And recognize your own shortcomings or frailties. Yeah.
Right. That might lead to the fact that these things are happening to you, and again, not justifying that people should be that way, but that's real ownership of our lives. Which today, unfortunately, the sentiment is that we don't own our lives and we kind of are a victim of our circumstance. But not anybody that's coming here to learn Tanya, because if you were, you wouldn't be here. You would be elsewhere. The fact that you're learning here is a testament of your desire to truly own your life. And with that, I bid everybody a wonderful day. Reminder, Rambam today at 12:45, we're going to learn the laws of Yom Kippur. Actually, even though it's not Yom Kippur today, we're eating. But those are the laws. And it's actually a very short class. Still come and join us, 12:45. I'm Rabbi Ronnie Fine, coming to you from Chabad, Zich and Kedoshim in Montreal, Canada. It's a privilege and a pleasure to share with you the Tanya. Have a wonderful day.